Good evening and welcome to the Greg Tompsett Football Show. Tonight, I was really hoping to be able to jump on and talk about how the Chiefs had lost and kept the one seed still in range. But of course, they won with another crazy ending with a doinked in field goal off the upright to win the AFC West and to beat the Los Angeles Chargers 19 to 17. Today obviously didn't go the Bills' way. There was a bunch of games that were in play that could have helped the Bills' seeding and situation, and obviously did not fall the way that we were hoping. So I'm going to go through a handful of things here to kind of show some of the options of where the Bills currently sit, what the different options are of what came today in the games, and then we'll kind of talk through some of the other situations that happened. So obviously, the Bills losing their crazy shootout to the Rams was by far the most impactful. Most of the other games today, it was funny to see the Jags win a game and give up the number one pick in the draft, but good for them. Great there. The Jets and Dolphins played a hysterical mid-off, just seeing who could be more average and bad. And the Dolphins were slightly less bad, so good for them. Vikings keep ruining the second round pick for us again. Not a lot went our way. The Giants, thankfully for any Giants fans in our lives, they figured out a way to hold on to the loss and solidify the number one pick for themselves. If anybody didn't hear, there was a guy out in Vegas who bet $3 million on the Eagles to beat the Panthers. He would have won back, he did win $600,000 because they did win. But there was a healthy amount of time here, including a Xavier Legette almost catch at the end that would have given the Panthers the 23-22 win. They just barely hit the ground as he dove and rolled over. Somebody tweeted, I think it was Mike Clay, saying that guy's going to have a framed Xavier Legette jersey in his house. Or in his mansion. I think he said mansion in the tweet because he can bet $3 million in a football game. So he's doing pretty good in life. So now getting into some of the games that did impact the Bills. Would have been fun if the Browns beat the Steelers, just to give them a loss. I'll show in a moment in the standings based on strength of victory. We're still ahead of them. But clearly would have been helpful. Just Jameis was a little too much Jameis in that game. It wasn't a great game, but again, Russell Wilson's playing tough with that combination of defense and him throwing deep balls. It's working for them right now. Certainly against teams that'll shoot themselves in the foot, like the Browns will. So I get Bucks Raiders didn't really affect Seahawks Cardinals, not a ton of effect. It really came down to the game tonight. And like almost every Chiefs game so far this season, they looked okay. They did go out to a pretty big lead. They were up 13-0. At one point, the Chargers came back, scored, two in a row to take the lead back, 14-13. Then they traded field goals. The Chargers went down, kicked field goal 7 with 4 minutes left. Had a chance to convert again on a first down, but weren't able to. Couldn't get into the end zone. Ended up having to settle for a 37-yard field goal to go up 17-16, and then had multiple shots to stop the Chiefs in that last drive. The Chiefs end up getting the clutch first down to be able to run the clock all the way down, kick field goals, time ran out. Even in doing so, they still had Matthew Wright doink it in off the upright to be able to pull it home. But they remain at 12-1. The Bills fall to 10-3 with their game. Tomorrow night, we have Cowboys, Bengals. So not a ton, obviously, with the teams on bye. You have the Ravens and the Texans, the Colts and the Broncos, 4 of the playoff teams all on bye. There wasn't a ton of impactful football today. So it was really a shame that the 3 games that really mattered, Bills, Steelers, and Chiefs, all went against the Bills' direction. So let's switch over and look at the standings of what that actually does for this team. So the setup for it here, you have obviously the Chiefs stay as the 1 seed at 11-1. The Bills do stay as the 2 seed. They've already clinched a playoff spot. They clinched the division. They're ahead of the Steelers because the tiebreaker obviously goes to head-to-head. We didn't play the Steelers. Then you go into conference record. We're tied. We're both 7-2 in conference record. And then you go to strength of victory. So each week, previously when we would talk about, or if you read Uber Hansen's article, he talks a lot about strength of victory. So when we have games with teams that we played and beat, having them do better. So our strength of victory, which is different than strength of schedule. Strength of schedule is just everybody you play. Strength of victory is how good is the record of the teams you beat. The teams we've beaten are better actually than almost everybody that you see here. The Ravens have a higher strength of victory because they beat us, so that helps them. But everybody else, you see the Chargers, the Texans, the Steelers, we're ahead of all that, and we're ahead of the Chiefs. So our record in strength of victory is higher. So that's going to be a tiebreaker for us. We only have 2 conference losses. That's not too bad. A lot of other teams are in the same range. Houston and Pittsburgh are in the same range. Obviously, the Chiefs only have 1 loss. We are that 1 loss. So we still need the Chiefs to lose 2 more times, plus the Bills to run the table here. So it's getting less and less likely that the 1 seed is going to be in play. So we'll see where those come into play. But there's a couple things that I want to go through that maybe is a little bit of a silver lining. So, as RJ put here, no one can tell me Casey didn't make a deal with the devil 2 years ago. I wish I could give you evidence that that's not the case, but it's tough too. I do agree with Pops Mafia here that the Steelers won't beat the Eagles next week. I think that's very likely. The Eagles are playing really tough right now, but we'll see. The Steelers are tough, and their defense makes teams make bad mistakes, and we've seen their offense doesn't require a ton of efficiency because they hit on big plays. So some of that variance, the team that's supposed to win doesn't always win when that happens. So I agree with you. I'm going to pick the Eagles to win, but we'll see. The Steelers have pulled out weirder games. So I know RJ, I always joke, is kind of the captain of Nervous Mafia. I have a scenario for you that hopefully will help you guys feel a little bit better about maybe winning the 1 seed isn't necessarily the most valuable piece of what's there. So as we look at it here, the way that it's currently laid out, I think it's really likely to finish this way. So as you see, the Broncos have a 2-game lead on the Colts. So 2-game lead with 4 to play. It's not a guarantee, but that's a pretty healthy stretch to be in that spot. I don't think they're going to catch the Ravens because you look at the things, the strength of victory and the other pieces that are there. There's a chance that the Steelers and Ravens could swap spots because the Steelers do have a tough schedule here, and one of those games is Baltimore. So Pittsburgh's next 4 games, it's Philly, Baltimore, KC, and Cincinnati. That's a tough finish. But that's the same idea. Baltimore has to beat them, plus to win the other games. Baltimore has an easier run with the Giants, but then they play Pittsburgh, they play at Houston, and finish with Cleveland. So I think it's possible Baltimore catches them, but it's still a 2-game lead, and Pittsburgh already has 1 in hand. So the best that Baltimore can do is tie them, and then you bring in the other tiebreakers into play. So again, that's why I think it's going to stay there. Nobody's catching Houston, and I also don't think Houston's catching anybody else. And the Chargers, although they lost tonight, are in pretty decent shape with their team. I'm going to look at their remaining schedule here. The Chargers have Tampa, Denver, New England, Las Vegas. Much, much easier schedule than Pittsburgh, easier than Baltimore. Again, they're still going to win the games. They lost tonight, but that Harbaugh team is playing tough. They play smart. I think they're going to be in pretty good shape to be able to stay in the position they're in. So again, I think there's a high likelihood that this is the seeding in the order that it stays in. There could be a little bit of shuffling, but I think in general it's going to stay about this area. So the reason I want to bring it up is obviously we would love to have home field advantage. We would love to have the 1 seed. You get a bye in the first round. You don't have to play around to the playoffs. It's a huge advantage. I'm not going to try to say that it's better. It's not. I would much prefer the 1 seed. But once we start playing, here's a small reason that I think it's sneaky is that with Houston kind of being a lower team in there and that Pittsburgh kind of a hollow 3 seed, the NFL reseeds after each round. They redo the seeding. So it's not as simple as, the Bills are the 2 seeds, so they play the 7 and they play the winner of 3-6, and that Houston plays the winner of 4-5, like you would see in the NCAA March Madness bracket or most bracket tournaments. They reseed. So the lowest seed from the first round, the wild card round, is the team that goes to Kansas City. So if the Bills beat Denver, which again, I'm not going to take anything for granted, you have to show up, you have to play, blah, blah, blah. You can't let any of those things go unsaid. We have to show up and beat Denver, but I think we will. I think we'll be a healthy favorite, and I think we will beat Denver. That eliminates a 7 seed. Then I think it's very possible, even likely, that Baltimore would beat Pittsburgh. I think they'll be tied going in. I think Pittsburgh will win the division, but I think Baltimore will beat them in the playoffs, which means Baltimore is the lowest remaining seed, which means Kansas City's reward for being the 1 seed is hosting Baltimore, while Buffalo would play the winner and host the winner of Houston, Los Angeles. So we'd play at home against Denver. We'd play at home against the winner of Houston, Los Angeles, which again, we still have to show up. We lost to Houston earlier this year in Houston, but I think we can beat both of those teams. And then either we would go to Kansas City because if Kansas City beat Baltimore, we would have to go there and beat them. Or if Baltimore beat Kansas City, we would be the highest remaining seed and we would then host Baltimore at home and we would play 3 straight home playoff games. So I do think it's really important to stay a top 2 seed. We don't want to drop to the 3 seed. So we need to keep winning. We need Pittsburgh to get some losses here. Again, Pittsburgh has a tough schedule. I think they're going to lose. When you talk about, their next 4 games, I think that we'll have at least one. We want them to win one more than us. I don't know that I want them to drop below Baltimore, but when they're playing Philly, Baltimore, Kansas City, Cincy, they're going to lose 2 of those is my guess. So we want Baltimore to lose 1 of theirs too. So that way we can kind of balance it out. If Pittsburgh beats Baltimore, it's all over anyway. So that's the easiest one to root for. We'll root for Pittsburgh to lose to Philly and Kansas City or Philly and Cincy, but to beat Baltimore. And then that will put them as the division winner. And that scenario I laid out can play out. So again, we still want to keep winning. We want Kansas City to lose twice. We want to be able to get that 1 seed. But if it doesn't, just a little silver lining that some of that, the way that the bracket is playing out this year and how Baltimore dropped some of those games, I think there's still some benefit there to being a top 2 seed, and that there's a very possible scenario where you could still host all the games in the playoffs. We've seen Kansas City, play with fire all season long, and this time when they play Baltimore, if in the scenario I laid out, if Isaiah Likely's toe doesn't go out of bounds like they did in the first week, they would knock Kansas City out, and then Baltimore would have to come to Buffalo. And Buffalo would be in the home team in all 3 rounds. So, again, we still got to keep winning. We got to take care of business. But just a scenario that kind of popped up in my mind earlier tonight as I was kind of looking at the playoff seeding, that, of course, we want the 1 seed. There's lots of benefits to it, but that there's maybe a little silver lining to being the 2 seed with the way that the teams are jockeyed and laid out this year. So appreciate you guys jumping on here with me. Just a quick recap we're going to do each week as we go forward, looking at where the teams are, how it plays out. I'll start playing with the New York Times simulator and playing around with some of those the next couple weeks. But appreciate you guys jumping in here with me and hanging out. We'll have these recaps as we go. But on behalf of everybody over at Cover One, make sure you check out all the stuff going on. Aaron and I vented for an hour and a half in the post-game show earlier tonight. We'll do a really good film breakdown of the stuff coming up from the game with Eric and Anthony, and obviously get ourselves ready for Detroit. Really big game coming up here. Really tough test after putting the stuff on film this defense did today. The Bills are going to have to get their stuff together because Ben Johnson and Jared Goff and that offense, especially Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery, got to be licking their chops at what they can do. So appreciate you guys very, very much. I appreciate the second most handsome man in Bills coverage hanging out with us here, Alex Brasky. Appreciate you guys. And as always, go Bills. Thanks for hanging out with us tonight. And we are out.